Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly epic slice of American history. We're going to explore the 100-year evolution of the longest-running radio broadcast in the nation's history, the Grand Ole Opry. Over the next few minutes, we'll dive right into the historical records to chart this institution's incredible journey. We're talking about the trailblazers, the undeniable resilience, and the fascinating, behind-the-scenes moments that built the whole shebang.
But first, I want you to think about a bit of a brain teaser. How exactly did an insurance company create the home of American music? Honestly, it sounds like the setup to a punchline, right? I mean, the Grand Ole Opry is completely synonymous with rhinestones, cowboy boots, and legendary music. But as you'll see, its origins are actually surprisingly corporate.
So our story kicks off back in the 1920s. Picture this, in a fifth-floor studio of a pretty standard office building in downtown Nashville. The National Life and Accident Insurance Company makes a wild decision to launch a radio station. A radio-loving founder actually had to convince the company to do this just as a promotional tool. It was a completely different era of media, but man, it set the stage for absolutely everything that was to come.
And things moved remarkably fast from there. In 1924, a Chicago station started airing a program called the National Barn Dance. Well, producers down in Nashville took notice, and in 1925, they literally hired that Chicago show's announcer, a guy named George D. Hay, to launch their own local version, the WSM Barn Dance. The very first guest was a 77-year-old fiddler named Uncle Jimmy Thompson. But 1927 is when history was truly made. Right after a broadcast of classical music, Hay hopped on air and announced that listeners had been hearing grand opera, but from now on, they'd be presenting the Grand Ole Opry. And well, the name stuck perfectly.
Okay, so what about that insurance company connection? Get this, the call letters of the station, WSM, were actually an acronym for the National Life and Accident Insurance Company's slogan, which was "We Shield Millions." This literal corporate acronym laid the broadcasting foundation for a cultural phenomenon that would very quickly spread like wildfire across the nation.
Section 1. The Harmonica Wizen. Let's talk about DeFord Bailey. He was a 4'10" polio survivor, and he is widely considered to be the very first true Opry performer. Because of a severe childhood illness, he spent months totally bedridden, just listening to passing trains and painstakingly learning to imitate those exact sounds on his harmonica. He created an absolute masterpiece called the Pan-American Blues and became a massive, massive star on the early Opry stage. He was the first black country star, and at the time, he was second in popularity only to the legendary Uncle Dave Macon.
But Bailey's exit from the Opry in 1941 has been surrounded by a really long-running rumor. There's this tall tale that persists saying he was fired due to his race. Historical researchers, though, point to a very different reality. It was actually a massive copyright dispute. See, in 1941, radio stations, WSM included, refused to pay the higher fees being demanded by the performance rights organization ASCAP. Because of this strike, artists were legally blocked from playing any ASCAP copyrighted material on the radio. And tragically for Bailey, his signature songs, which he'd recorded years earlier, were copyrighted under them.
This quote from the historical sources really hits the nail on the head. You might be wondering, why didn't he just play new songs that were in the public domain? Well, as the source notes, had Bailey performed other songs, it would have been as well received as a peanut butter and artichoke pizza. The fans tuned in specifically for his iconic train impressions. So totally deprived of his signature hits by a rapidly changing music industry, he was let go from the Opry. He was ultimately an unfortunate casualty of corporate copyright battles.
Section 2. Trailblazing Women of Country.
The Grand Ole Opry has also been a totally vital platform for women shattering glass ceilings left and right. Take Patsy Cline. She didn't even wait for an invitation. She just straight up asked to join the Opry, and later became the first woman in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Loretta Lynn, first female CMA Entertainer of the Year. Crystal Gayle became the first female country artist to sell 1 million copies and go platinum. And bringing it right up to the modern day, Kelsea Ballerini is the only female country artist to have her debut album yield 3 #1 singles. These women didn't just participate in country music, they completely redefined the entire genre.
And speaking of redefining the genre, we absolutely have to talk about Kitty Wells. Back in 1952, she released It Wasn't God Who Made Honky-Tonk Angels. It was a direct, unapologetic response to a male artist's song, and it boldly challenged the double standards and wifely duties of the era. The song was so searing and controversial that it was actually banned from being played on the Grand Ole Opry at first. But you know what? It struck such a massive chord with women across America that its sheer popularity eventually forced the Opry to cave and let her perform it on their stage anyway.
The boundary pushing certainly didn't stop there. There's a brilliant quote in the records from Jeannie Seeley. She was being challenged by Opry manager Ott Devine for having the audacity to wear a miniskirt on stage. Her response? "Okay, this is what America is wearing, and I'll make you a deal. I won't wear a miniskirt in the back door if you don't let anybody wear one in the front door." It's just a hilarious, awesome mini-narrative that shows exactly how these women fiercely modernized the institution from the inside out.
Section 3. Venues, Floods, and Pandemics.
So the Opry famously spent decades at the Ryman Auditorium, affectionately known as the Mother Church of Country Music. It saw massive triumphs there, but also some pretty surprising moments. Believe it or not, Elvis Presley played the Opry exactly once, in 1954. And the reception was so lukewarm that management reportedly told him not to quit his day job. No way, right? It just goes to show that the Opry stage has always had a mind and a standard completely of its own.
By the 1970s, the crowds had simply gotten too big for the Ryman. So, in 1974, the Opry made a monumental move to a brand new 4,440-seat Opry House. To give you an idea of how much cultural weight the show carried by this point, opening night was attended by none other than President Richard Nixon, who even got up and played the piano. The show had officially transformed from a quirky regional radio broadcast into a bona fide national treasure.
To truly understand the scale of this institution, consider this number: 4,000. In the year 2002, the Grand Ole Opry celebrated its 4,000th consecutive Saturday night broadcast. Just think about that for a second. Through wars, economic depressions, and wildly changing musical tastes, there was this unbroken chain of Saturday nights where the music just kept playing.
But that unbroken circle was severely tested. Contrast that triumph with the number 5. In May of 2010, a historic and devastating flood ravaged Nashville, forcing the legendary Opry House to close its doors for 5 long months. But the institution's resilience really shone through. They didn't cancel. They simply packed up their gear, moved to other venues around Nashville, and kept the broadcast alive while the house was beautifully restored.
And they had to draw on that exact same resilience just a decade later. In March 2020, when the global COVID-19 pandemic shut down the entire world, for the very first time, the Opry had to cancel its live audience shows. But again, they didn't stop the music. The Saturday Night Opry broadcasted live to a completely empty room, relying on live stream technology and, amazingly, the very same WSM radio station that started it all. It proved that absolutely nothing can break the circle.
Section 4. A Century of Country. On November 28, 2025, exactly 100 years to the day, a 77-year-old fiddler stepped up to a microphone in an insurance building. The Grand Ole Opry will officially mark its centennial. It stands today with an absolutely untouchable legacy, having shaped, shared, and defined an entire genre of American music.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. As the Opry embarks on its next century, how will the home of American music continue to evolve and surprise us? Who will be the next generation of trailblazers brave enough to step into that iconic wooden circle?